Josh, since there's no one in the room right now, I have a question for you. I have one person that says they don't know how to join. Who do they contact?
Jake at Literacy Services.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, thank you. Jake, I think, oh my gosh, Josh, I'm so sorry. Josh, I think there may be problems this morning because Miriam at our T-call office is getting flooded with phone calls about something with this link or something. I don't know what's going on
With this link. Okay.
with this session. I'm sorry, I'm pulling up the email right now.
That's fine. I'll call Jake.
Yeah, I mean, this may not be very popular because a lot of people already know Standards 2.0. So this, this doesn't, I mean, this is disheartening, but at the same time, I understand. So that may be part of it. But this is now two people. She's gotten a call and I got an email, and I already forwarded the email to Jake. So
Okay.
okay.
I'll call Jake on the phone right now, and then yeah,
Okay.
don't worry about the attendance. If the attendance is low, then just focus on making a good video, because people will watch it later, and you can use this later. You know,
Okay, that's awesome. And then Liz and I can kind of talk about what we can, any suggestions, Liz, too. Okay, all right.
yeah,
I'm
just
willing to do it even with one person, so that's fine.
yeah, and just focus
Okay.
on make a real good recording, and you'll because the recording will last forever. It's good.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody. I know that people are rolling in, and I just wanted to say hi. We're going to get started here in a few minutes. Thank you so much for your patience. I'm so glad you're here with me right now. So we're going to go ahead and get started because we are starting 3 minutes behind schedule. So I just want to say welcome and hello. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn my video camera off and we are going to start. So thank you so much for being here with me. And I'm going to go ahead and send you this message in the chat pod that I had set. And let's go ahead and get started. Thank you again, everybody. And I'm gonna wave, but I am going to turn off my video camera to preserve bandwidth. So here we go. All right. All right. Good morning, everyone. I am Annemarie Molinari, and I am a professional development specialist with Texas A&M University and part of TCAL, the Texas Center for the Advancement of Literacy and Learning. And that is always such a mouthful when you try to say it. And this is Going Standards 2.0, integrating content standards and job skills for success. And I would like to acknowledge a colleague of mine that is on the webinar that will be helping me moderate the chat pod and keep me on my toes. And that is my colleague and partner in crime, Miss Liz Moya, coming to us from El Paso, Texas. So I could not do these webinars without her. I also want to acknowledge Josh DuPont for being the producer and the host. So thank you so much, Josh. And again, thank you, because I know that there were technical difficulties this morning. So really quickly, before we get started, I would like to know how many of you were able to download and view, or at least download, the PowerPoint and the participant handout packet that I made available in this session on the CVent app? How many of you were able to access it? Now, you do not have to view it during the webinar. You can, but it is more for after, so you can review and also have the handout packet. So using your reaction buttons, your interactive reaction buttons in the chat pod, it gives me a green check for yes or a red X for no. All right. And I see we have Maria Morrow in the house from TWC. Thank you so much, Maria, for being here with us today. All right. So Liz, how did we do? How many people were able to?
So far we have a couple of yeses and a couple of nos. Some are downloading it now.
Okay. All right.
Most have not responded yet.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And again, everything you need will be on the screen, but if you do want to look at something, it's there. The handout is quite long. It's got a lot of materials for you, and the PowerPoint is quite large because I gave you both webinar 1 and webinar 2. All right, here we go. All right, so setting this stage for this virtual training, just a couple of things to keep in mind. This Going Standards 2.0 training is broken down into 2 75-minute virtual trainings with 2 5-minute question and answer sessions during the trainings, okay? We're going to have hard stop for questions, but Liz will interrupt me if she thinks that there's a question that I can answer really quick, all right? Other than that, we're going to stick to our hard stop Q&A and know that I am here for you after this training. A couple other things. This training is designed for people that do not know that much about Standards 2.0. If you are already using Standards 2.0 in your classroom, you feel comfortable for it, keep in mind that this may be a review and I don't want you to get frustrated, okay? So this is for people that are not at all familiar with Standards 2.0. So I want you to kind of keep that in mind in case you want to go to a different session, all right? And that was spelled out in the description very clearly in the Literacy Texas catalog, okay? All right, so after webinar 1, we're going to have a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back for webinar 2 with, again, 2 5-minute Q&A hard stops during the training. So over the past 2.5 years, which I can't believe it's been that long, I have been intricately involved with the inception of the Standards 2.0 Odyssey, as I like to call it. And regardless of what your program's instructional format is going to look like in the fall or during summer classes, whether you're going to have purely online classes or some face-to-face and some online, Standards 2.0 or Standards 2.0 based instruction has a place in the design of your lessons, okay? So think about how you can adapt your lessons for Zoom and, you know, start with a Standards 2.0 lesson. And when you start with the standard and build your lesson from there, that is what we call backward design. So whether you're teaching online or you're in a face-to-face classroom, think about starting with your standard in mind. Okay, so virtual training norms, you can choose to review the PowerPoint handout and training during this packet during this training if you'd like. If you do have your handout packet up on a second screen or you have it printed out, when you see that post-it note icon on the PowerPoint slide, that will tell you what handout to refer to. You actually have 5 handouts that I'm going to be referring to. So that's a key to look at your handout packet. Please, I really appreciate participate in all the activities. We're going to be together for 3 hours via the chat pod, the polls, and the reaction button questions. There's going to be an awful lot of reaction. I'm going to be asking you a lot of questions. All right, and then finally, please stay with me. Turn off all email notifications and other distractions so we can really get into the weeds and you know, spend this time together productively. We have 3 objectives for webinar 1. We are going to recognize the work activities and the industry examples and the standards. And if that sounds new to you, then that's a good sign because this is what I want to share with you today. We also are going to take a look at the employability skills framework and relate the work skills and activities to that framework. And Dr. Olga Escamilla is doing a session this afternoon in detail about the employability skills framework, but we'll touch on it. And we're going to recognize briefly the new components of a Standards 2.0 lesson template that I've made available for you in your packet. And you can email me after to get a Word version of the template if you would like. Okay. And you know, before I forget, I'm really curious, how many of you attended the PBS Learning Media session yesterday that Liz and I did? That's the first question. How many of you did? If you could just put a green check mark. I'm not sure, Liz, can you clear the reaction buttons for me? And then let's see, did anybody attend our session yesterday?
Yeah, so we do have a couple of folks already placing it in the chat.
Woohoo!
And a couple of people raising their hands. So we have Teresa and Mike and Martine, Darlene, Miss Lane. Wow, so got lots of fans here. Annemarie,
Wonderful.
Nancy.
No pressure. Okay, so you know about PBS Learning Media, so now you can think about the lessons that you can choose to address some of these standards. So how cool is that? So thank you for sharing that. Anybody from Oklahoma in the house this morning? Because I know I had one gentleman from Oklahoma yesterday, Liz and I did. Anybody returning or here from Oklahoma?
I'm looking at the chat. I don't see anything yet, and I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, all right. So let's keep going here. And let's see who is seated at our virtual table, right? And I noticed that we're not 6 feet apart in this question. I mean, in this picture, but let's not look at the picture. We are socially distancing right now. So who is seated at our virtual table? In the chat pod, I'm just kind of I just want to get a feel. Liz, if you can let me know, are you an instructional lead, an ESL teacher, a tutor, a volunteer? Career navigators, you kind of get the gist. So let me know in the chat pod who you are. I'd like to know, Liz, I'm just kind of getting a feel if it's mostly teachers or.
So far I have one person that's responded. So I'm just waiting for everyone to feverishly finish typing. Lots of ESL instructors, an
Okay.
HSC instructor, teacher and navigator, instructional leader, instructor of GED, teacher, ASC ABE instructor. So for the most part, we have teachers, an education coordinator who's also a teacher, a trainer, volunteer instructor, welcome, and a tutor.
Excellent. Okay, so this is wonderful. All right, good. All right, so the interaction continues with our first poll. So I'm going to have Josh bring up the poll now for me, and the poll is: how familiar are you with the Texas AEL Content Standards 2.0? All right. Okay, good. And let's just wait until 30 seconds, Josh, and then we'll close it. All right, so another 10 seconds, and I have 53 people with me. Whoa, thank you. All right, somewhat, not at all. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and close the poll. So, all right, good. Wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing. And all right, so we have overwhelmingly 56% of you said somewhat, some said very, and some said not at all. So those of you that are very familiar, I want you to share your expertise with us today in the chat pod, because we're all going to learn from each other, okay? So thank you so much for that. Okay, here we go. All right, so how did we get here? This is a very important part of kind of understanding this odyssey, and it really has been an odyssey. How did we get here? Well, before I answer that question, I want to give you a little bit of background and kind of set the stage. If you have seen the first version of the Texas AEL Content Standards, we call it the Green Book, that's what it was, realize the core academic standards have not changed, all right? They haven't changed. Standards 2.0's goal is to interconnect the academic, instruction, and career preparation instead of making it an either-or situation. That was TWC's goal, and they were passionate about the redesign of this, as I was. And so think of it as everything is in one place for you to kind of look at it holistically. It's the perfect intersection where academic skills and career skills training can meet for success. So I also want you to know that when you went to the Cvent app for this session, the link to the digital copy of Standards 2.0 was available for you. But if not, the entire 2.0 digital book is available on the TCAL website, and Liz is going to put that link in the chat pod. And you're going to have the option to look at the whole book or the sections of the book, ELA, Math, ESL. So Liz is going to put that in the chat pod, and we'll be putting it in the chat pod back, several times before we're done. All right, so how did we get here? Back to the original question. How did we get here? The Standards 2.0 version of the original standards that were created in 2016 is a direct result of the work accomplished during something called the Standards Alignment to Industry Clusters Project, which occurred during 2017-18. This is important for all of you because we had some very important visitors that were part of this project. And that's what makes Standards 2.0 something different than anything that's out there nationally, okay? And the SIAC project brought together passionate minds from both the education and the industry sector, eager to create a document that could be useful for a variety of purposes. All right, so the standards alignment to industry clusters aligned the content standards, the current content standards, with the knowledge, skills, and abilities needed for success in demand entry and intermediate level jobs, right? And it helps adult learners be prepared for jobs and careers, helps focus instruction and career navigation, and there were 4 industries that they focused on, right? Now, what's interesting about this too is that Standards 2.0 aims to illustrate how the standards are relevant to work while maintaining the competencies needed to prepare students for educational progress and transition to post-secondary education and training. And that was what was really missing, that alignment to the skills that they actually needed in the job. So building Standards 2.0. Okay, and so the field experts from education and employment reviewed the content standards and selected 4 in-demand industries to focus on. And what they did was the subject matter experts and the employment subject matter experts reviewed each standard and sub-area standard in 3 content areas: ESL, math, and English language arts. And they determined the standards application to entry level and mid-level jobs in these 4 targeted industry clusters. So, and then they combined what Onet, and we're going to talk about Onet in a little bit. They looked at what Onet said, and then the Texas subject matter expert said, this is what's really happening in the industry sector for Texas. So here's your question in the chat pod, please. What do you think the 4 in-demand industry sectors were? Okay. I'd like you to kind of guess in the chat pod. There were 4 industries, so think broad. And think about what your students are doing. And let's take about 30 seconds to do this, 30 or 40 seconds. So in the chat pod, what do you think those industries would be?
So we have some responses: food, healthcare, distribution, food services, welding, transportation, hair, construction, logistics, construction, health, technology, and food service, welding, hospitality, healthcare, manufacturing.
Yep, good. All right, good. And just Liz, if we see any others, let me know in a minute, but let's keep going. All of you, those of you that put several of in there, hit them right on the head. Okay, so we're thinking broad. So advanced manufacturing is the first industry, and that's going to be your warehouse jobs. Those are going to be your jobs in factories, right? Then we have construction and extraction, and we know that that is huge in Texas. And then we have transportation, distribution, and logistics, which I've heard all of these. Was construction mentioned, Liz? I think it was.
Yes, it was mentioned by a couple of folks.
Exactly. Okay, so those are your 4, and within those 4 industries, you have many, many different occupations, correct? So you've got all these different occupations. So why were these industries chosen? These industries were chosen because they're growing in Texas, they're in every region, And this is an important part. They have an accessible career pathway for adult education students. So what does that mean? It means that there's an opportunity for stackable certifications. So if you think of a welder, you think of stackable certifications for the health field, for someone in nursing, starting out as a nursing assistant. Then they can go to a medical assistant. Then they can become a physician's assistant or a nurse. So they're stackable credentials. And now, what was wonderful about the SIAC project too is that there were 28 different industry representatives in the project. So we didn't just hear from one person. We heard from 28 different industries that ranged from oil to gas to construction to entrepreneurs and healthcare human resource directors to manufacturing. And we're going to hear from one of the industry subject matter experts during webinar 2. All right, here we go. Now again, they looked at the work requirements and activities for the entry and intermediate level jobs in the 4 industry sectors, and then related the skills and work tasks to each benchmark. So now when you open up the standards, you don't just see the standards anymore. And we'll be looking at the standards here very quickly. All right. And Patty, do I have questions, Liz? Let me just take a quick check here.
I'm checking the chat pod. No, ma'am. But however, I do want to clarify that people are commenting that they don't have the option to select all panelists and attendees, and that's okay. I'm monitoring the chat, and if I see anything that's relevant, I'll go ahead and post it so everyone else can read it.
Oh, goodness. Okay, so maybe Josh can fix that. That's a literacy Texas Tech issue. So I am sorry about that. But
that's okay. We're going to make do. We're going to make
awesome.
do.
All right, good. Okay. So how many of you are familiar with Onet? Because if we are, we're going to move through these. Go ahead and give me a green check mark if you can in the chat pod. I think we're all familiar with Onet. All right, good. Right? Okay, very good. All right, here's a question. What does Onet stand for? Someone in the chat pod, tell me. What does it stand for? Anybody know? I always forget this, by the way.
I have a couple of no's, not familiar.
All right. So it's the Occupational Information Network. So the acronym doesn't match. Occupational Information Network. And if Liz can, I'm going to let her put that in the chat pod. So the thing we need to realize about Onet is it is the nation's, not largest. The Onet program is the nation's primary source of occupational information and is developed, monitored, and overseen by the U.S. Department of Labor, okay? And they have ongoing input from people in the field. So they're constantly updating job requirements, detailed work activities, what's needed for that occupation, all right? I encourage you to go there if you have not already, but it sounds like we are. All right, so now we're going to have another interactive activity here. One of the things that is added to the standards is something called critical elements or skills. So if you hear me say critical elements, what I'm really talking about are skills. And during the SIAC project, TWC brought in the Educational Testing Service. And the Educational Testing Service was hired to identify, and this is really cool, the Onet critical elements or skills that were essential to jobs within the 4 high-demand entry and intermediate industry clusters. So what that means is, what critical skills were across all the industries. So whether I was in healthcare sciences or if I was in advanced manufacturing, what are the skills that I need? So I'm going to give you a clue. They found 10. So what I would like you to do is try to name 4. What do you think critical skills, what are the critical skills that are needed across these jobs? And go ahead in the chat pod now, try to give me, you know what, let me take that back. Try to name 1. Go ahead,
Anne-Marie, I'm going to go ahead and interrupt because they were able to troubleshoot, and now everyone has the opportunity to select all panelists and all attendees. So if you do that, everyone is able to see responses. So go ahead and click on that, please.
Awesome.
Thank you, Josh.
Yes, thank you, Josh, so much. So the question is again, ETS identified 10 critical skills that are present across all 4 industries, which means all the occupations. So I want you to try to name as many as you can. What do you think those critical skills are going to be? And I want you to think about academic, but also soft skills that are needed in the workplace. So what are some things? So we're going to just take about another 20 seconds here. I'm making you guys think, I know. And I just wish I can't hear your voices, but I'm pretending I'm hearing your voices. So Liz, what are some of my answers here?
Yes, ma'am. So we have problem solving, critical thinking, teamwork, math, communication, read memos, social interaction, lots of teamwork, communication, interpersonal, language and reading, working in groups, following directions.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, so before I reveal, you guys are spot on. Some of you were more detailed, more broad, but you're spot on. So thank you. And let me explain too that the critical elements that I'm about to show you are now in the Standards 2.0. And I'm going to share with you where they're located and we'll talk more about them. But they are now in Standards 2.0. So here we go. So many of you touched on these. So we've got active listening, adaptability, flexibility, cooperation. Do you agree that these are soft skills, right? Do you guys agree? Say yes or give me a green check mark. Those are soft skills for the workplace. Then we have your academic skills, mathematics, oral comprehension, reading comprehension, speaking, writing, written comprehension, and written expression. And so the employer said, which was very interesting, many of the subject matter experts said, we can teach them what we need them to learn on the job. But what we do not have time for is to teach them these academic skills. So they need to come prepared with those academic skills. All right, very good. Okay, I'm going to take a deep breath here. So we learned about the SIAC project, and you have an idea of why Standards 2.0 looks the way it does. So now we're going to break down a standard and a benchmark and all the things that go with it. All right, so we're going to look at Standards 2.0, sub-area standard, and a benchmark. And we're going to discuss the structure and the additions to the book by examining one content area, one sub-area standard, and one benchmark. And we're going to repeatedly go back to that one sub-area so that we don't get confused, all right? So we're going to go to one point in the book. We're not going to be flipping all over the book. We're going to go to one part in the book. So as a reminder, you can have a digital copy of the Standards 2.0 booklet on the T-Call. So I'm going to have Liz put it in the chat just in case, and that way we can get started. So for the first couple of slides, I'm going to break down the standard, but be patient with me because then I'm going to actually show you the page in the Standards 2.0 book so you can see it all together, okay? So here we go. Now, there are 3 main content areas in Standards 2.0 that are indicated by a Roman numeral. So English Language Arts is content area 1. Math is content area 2. And ESL is content area 3. All right. We are going to examine an ELA standard. The mathematics content area follows the same structure, and ESL is a little different. So I would spend time, if I'm an ESL teacher, really getting to understand the ESL standards. They were set up a little bit different. Okay. Another tip I have for you, a suggestion, is when you have an opportunity, read the introduction of the Standards 2.0 book. It's about 11 pages. It's a fast read, and it will help you greatly. And if you are a new teacher, that would be an assignment that I would give you, is to read the introductions, because it will help you understand how the book is laid out. Okay, and I refer to the introduction often. So we're looking at content area 1, and we're looking at sub area 1.5 research. What that means is that 1 is content area 1, and that 5 means that that's a sub area under English Language Arts. And actually there are 6 sub areas in English Language Arts. Research is number 5. Now, under the sub-area of research, there are sub-area standards. And the sub-area standards are marked with a letter, A, B, C, D, E. So we're going to look at, for this entire rest of the webinar, we're going to focus on just this standard, our sub-area standard. And the sub-area standard is planning research. Use a variety of strategies to plan research. So in the back of your brain, I want you to already start thinking, what are some of the jobs and occupations that are going to require the mastery of this standard? And then each sub-area standard, or each sub-area, has benchmarks. There can be 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. This particular sub-area has 2 benchmarks. We're going to look at just this one. All right. And I'm going to let Liz lend her voice and read that benchmark for me.
So it says, formulate research topics and questions from the curriculum, current events, and the workforce. For example, identify possible topics by brainstorming, listing questions, using idea webs, organize prior knowledge about a topic, develop a course of action, and determine how to locate necessary information.
Thank you so much. And this sub-area standard does only have 2 benchmarks. And for the purposes of today, we're just going to focus on this benchmark, okay? All right. So here we go. Now, how's the pacing? We doing good? Let me know. Red marks, do we need to slow down? Pace good? We doing okay?
And just to let you know, Anne-Marie, that the participants do not have those reaction buttons available to them. The only buttons that you do have available to you are raising and lowering of your virtual hand, which is located at the bottom of your screen. And of course, you can use your chat pod.
Okay, so thank you for that, and I apologize, everybody. So just give me a thumbs up. How are we doing? The pacing okay? Thumbs up? Okay, good. Oh, okay, raised hand. All right, good, awesome. You guys are rock stars. Thank you very much. All right, so moving on then. All right, so remember, we talked about those Onet elements or skills, right? So now we're going to realize that these Onet elements are going to be tied to a specific stub area. Okay, so let me, and this is where it's a little bit interesting. The Onet elements are located at the beginning of every sub area. So they're a page before in the standards book. And the Onet elements are embedded in all the sub area standards, okay? Included for that sub area. So ELA sub area research has 3 sub area standards. We're looking at A, remember. So the elements or skills apply to all of them. So basically, in a nutshell, just remember that every sub area has specific elements that are applied to all the sub area standards. And we're going to look at those in a minute. Now, we also have, new to the Standards 2.0 book, the detailed work activities, which we haven't talked about yet, and the industry examples. Now, the detailed work activities, which I will call DWAs, so if you hear that, remember that's detailed work activities. The DWAs and the Onet elements come from Onet, all right? Now, when we see the industry examples, recognize that those came from the SIAC employee participants and from Onet, but mostly from the subject matter experts during the SIAC project, right? Now, the detailed work activities are aligned to a specific sub-area standard. So that's the tricky part. The Onet elements cover the whole sub-area, but the detailed work activities only apply to that specific sub-area standard. So remember, we're looking at sub-area standard A, planning research. Okay, so here I want to show you something. Now, if you look at the digital copy of the Standards 2.0 right now, you would see this. And I want to draw your attention to a couple of things. Does this look familiar? We just talked about this, didn't we? Sub-area standard, planning research, and then here are your benchmarks, okay? Now, what we're going to talk about next are these detailed work activities and industry examples. And I want to thank Liz because she gave me the suggestion to add this, and I think it's a really good visual so you can see it all together. Remember that your Onet elements apply to the whole sub-area, where these detailed work activities and industry examples only apply to this sub-area standard, which is A, planning research. And I don't know about you, I mean, this took me a long time to kind of process. So I think it's important to know the difference. All right, so let's keep going. All right, so the Onet elements apply to the whole sub-area standard. So we've already identified those, right? So here we have what are called our, these are going to be your personal characteristics. Attention to detail, dependability. I would argue that those are soft skills. You can learn those skills. You can learn to have attention to detail. You can have dependability. While these are academic skills, these are applied academic basic skills that you need. All right, here we go. Let's keep going. Now, let's look at these detailed work activities. Now, the way I describe the detailed work activities is they provide a broad view of the types of work activities that are expected for that industry example. So if we go back a few slides, you see how here are the detailed work activities, and you have this broad work activity. Well, it aligns to this industry example, advanced manufacturing, all right? So this is the broad work activity where this gives you the day-to-day description of what happens in that industry, in that position, and then an example of what a quality assurance technician would do. So I'm going to keep going. Sorry about that, everyone. All right, so here we go. So our detailed work activities for here, I'm going to let Liz read these, please.
Okay. Test products or sub-assemblies for functionality or quality. Organize informational materials. Follow protocols or regulations for healthcare activities.
Thank you. So this first detailed work activity aligns with that first industry example. The second one aligns with the second industry example, and then the third one aligns with the third one. All right, so here we go. Now we're going to see how it all lines up. So we have our industry examples, and the detailed work activity is on the left, and our first industry is advanced manufacturing. The position is quality assurance technician, and they, in that position, they verify the readings and records, verifies readings and records, the results of equipment, verifies readings, and records the results of equipment calibrations, identifies, assists, addresses, and documents quality holds, reads labels on products to ensure accuracy of shop orders. All right, so I want to stop for a minute and I want to ask you a question. Let's think about that sub-area standard, which is planning research. Why would it be important for this person, quality assurance technician, to have to be good at research? Look at what they're doing in their job. Why would they need to be good at research? And I want to take about 30 seconds, and I want a little quiet time, and I want you to type in the chat pod for me. Why is this industry example included under planning research, or is included in that standard? Why is research important in this job? And go ahead and let's take about 30 seconds and respond in the chat pod.
So I can see the smoke from here where they're all trying to type away, but I don't have any responses yet. Oh, here comes one from Nancy. It says, because it is a problem-solving skill. Thank you, Nancy.
Very good, Nancy. Very precise. Okay, so I'm going to give Nancy a critical thinking question. Nancy, why is it a problem-solving skill? Why? What are they trying to do? What are they trying to find out?
And then we have other responses from other people. Someone from McLennan says to do their job better. Why Barbo says must be able to keep up with current standards. Mike Sines says verify and identify. Good. And Beatriz says most be able to locate problems. And then Linda says verify standard.
Very good, because I'm really looking at down here where it says, well, first of all, quality assurance is going to be your front line to making sure no one gets hurt. When I hear the word quality assurance, the hair on the back of my neck starts to stand up, because I'm like, ooh, okay, quality assurance, right? Making sure that things are safe on the manufacturing floor, making sure things don't get into the food or the ice cream or whatever could be going on. And then here it says identifies, assists, addresses, and documents quality holds. So you were all right, spot on. So right there, you have a lot of room to develop some contextualized lessons using that standard, and also thinking about some things you could do with your students to kind of work through these positions. So very good. Let's go ahead and look at the next one. This one is really near and dear to my heart because my husband is in oil and gas and he's always in the field all the time. And this is something, research is very important. So here we have our second detailed work activity, organize informational materials. Now, the position is construction carpenter, but I decided I'm going to give you a scenario in a minute, so hold on. So you have construction carpenter. This does look like a construction scene to me. They're pouring some kind of concrete. There's a hole there. There's a whole lot going on in this picture. So that position maintains records, documents actions, hint, 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 and presents written progress reports. So here is your scenario. I have a scenario for you. The picture looks like it could be a construction site, correct? Use your, so do we agree? This looks like a construction site. I think we can all agree to that. So here's your scenario. What happens if one of the workers gets hurt on the job? What will the construction carpenter or supervisory carpenter on the job be required to do? How does the carpenter's job in this scenario relate to research? What are they going to need to do? And I'm going to throw out a word here. It's called OSHA recordable. Okay, so that may help you a little bit. OSHA responds to injuries on the job. So what is a construction carpenter or supervisory carpenter on the job required to do? Go ahead and let's take some time. Let's take about 30 seconds again.
Okay, so I know some of the responses are already coming in. Write an incident report, says Janine. Document how the accident happened, says Mary Turner. Report, explain incident. Documents on the job injury by completing reports. Safety meetings every week. So lots of really great responses related to safety and incident reporting. Jackie says record the facts and provide information for prevention and intervention. Must be able to show how the job was performed and what type of injuries could occur.
Excellent.
Nancy
Excellent.
says document and report and read complex materials.
Very good. Very good. And when you deal with certain jobs, well, with construction, extraction, oil and gas, if the injury is high enough, you have an OSHA 1, 2, and 3. When it goes beyond an OSHA 1 recordable, people start losing their jobs. People
Can I
start
just
losing.
add one more? This one's great.
Yes,
it says they have to document the incident in a report, check with witnesses in order to see what needs to be done to avoid in the future. That's by Ruby. That was great.
Very good, Ruby. And I hope that you hold on to this, because what we just did can turn into an activity for you and your students in the classroom. And again, I want to give a shout out to Liz Moya, because she encouraged me to add pictures, and I think it really helped draw out these examples. So keep these in mind when you look at the PowerPoint, because you can do these with your students. Okay, good job, everybody. Last one. We're a little bit behind schedule, but we're doing pretty good here. All right, so industry example number 3 and DWA, the third detailed work activity. Follow protocols or regulations for healthcare activities. So the industry is healthcare sciences. The position is sterile processing technician 1. Sounds very important to me. Monitors, reads, documents, and interprets parameters for all types of sterilizers to ensure proper function, and patient safety. And I want to say here that I've grown up with family members who have battled severe chronic illnesses and have been in and out of the hospital most of their lives, okay? So I've been around people that have been very sick and in and out of the hospital. I can say with 100% certainty that I want a sterile processing technician to master the sub-area standard planning research as well as the benchmarks. I want them to be extremely confident. I want to be extremely confident that a technician can interpret and follow strict safety protocols every day. I also could argue that most healthcare professionals, nurses, medical assistants, respiratory technicians, etc., need to master this standard so that they fight against infection. And now more than ever, right, with COVID-19. Just think about how important a sterile processing technician is right now, cleaning the equipment and everything going on. So, all right, so that wraps up that. And now we have this again, and you can see it all together. So we just walked through all this, and we did activities to kind of bring these out. So what we have just done is we have done the anatomy of a sub-area standard. We've talked about the standard, and then I've shown you this part. And this is what the Standards 2.0 book looks like all the way through. Okay. All right. I need to take a sip of water, and we're going to take, I don't know if we want to take 5 minutes. That seems a long time, but I do want to be quiet for a minute and see if there are any questions, and Liz can kind of look at the chat pod. I'm going to take a sip of my water here for a minute.
So I'm waiting for questions to post, but I do want to share a resource that was shared earlier by Jackie Aguilera. And
Oh,
she had posted that the Greater Houston Partnership developed a program called Upskill My Life. This is their
oh,
soft skills page. It's free, and some providers found it useful for HSC, ABE, and intermediate ESL. So I put that in the chat pod. I'm going to go ahead and put in the chat pod again. And I think it's just always great when we can share these type of resources. And then of course, we have our standard questions. Will we get PD credit for this webinar? And so for you or anyone else that's wishing to receive PD credit, you simply need to place your name in the chat pod requesting that you want PD. And then the folks from Literacy Texas will take care of that.
okay. And I want to give a shout out to Jackie Aguilera. Thank you so much, Jackie, for being here. And I'm going to put my email, I'm going to have Liz put my email address in the chat pod. And Jackie, will you email me that information, please? Or maybe Liz can grab it and send it to me, because that sounds wonderful. Teachers are always in need of resources for contextualization. That's why contextualizing lessons. And that's why I'm so excited that so many of you are here today after going to PBS Learning Media yesterday, because you can really connect the dots now as to how to use that resource. Okay, any other questions?
None at this time. Everyone's just feverishly posting that they want PD credit.
Okay, okay.
Which is
Okay.
good, right? That's what we all want. But she says that you all rock. So.
Okay. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, that's awesome. Okay, so we're a little bit behind schedule, so I'm gonna pick up the speed a tad. Let me know if I'm going too fast, because I really want to try to keep us on point. Losing that 5 minutes, there really wasn't a lot of time to spare in these workshops, and when I'm presenting, there really is a lot of time to spare. So, okay, so how many of you are familiar with the Employability Skills Framework? Go ahead and put your thumbs up if you are, and I won't spend a lot of time on this slide. We're gonna drill down.
So
Okay,
I see a
so
couple of hands up. They don't have thumbs up, but I only see one hand so far, and then I see some no's in the chat pod.
okay, so it's always wonderful when we have people that are not familiar with the Employability Skills Framework, because it's wonderful. So let me give you just a very, very broad, and then we're going to get into the nitty gritty. And you'll notice that our first handout icon has shown up on the PowerPoint. So your very first handout in your packet is going to be the graphic, a very detailed handout for the Employability Skills Framework, okay? So the Employability Skills Framework is the product of the U.S. Department of Education, and the objective of the framework is to describe in both broad and narrow detail the skills employees need to be successful in the workplace. And so before I forget, I want you to think of the Employability Skills Framework as a broad overlay that you can put on top of Standards 2.0. My teacher brain, that's how I saw this. So it works together with Standards 2.0, all right? It's a broad overlay. The Employability Skills Framework is all over the industry examples as far as the skills they're going to need, and we're going to look at that right now. But I do have a surprise for you, and that is that there is a direct link to the Employability's handout, so you can download a pretty copy if you want. And Liz is going to put that link in the chat pod. It's the direct link to the Employability Skills handout. And then you may want to check out the Employability Skills Framework Initiative page, which has some videos and it talks about the project, but I would definitely download your handout first. Now remember, I'm not going away after this 3-hour training, so email me. I'd love to talk to you on the phone. Standards 2.0 is my baby. It has been, so I'm here for you, okay? That's the thing you need to remember. Okay, so that's the Employability Skills Framework. And Liz is going to be helping me out a lot in this section with her voice. And here we go. So we are going to begin our discussion. So There are macro skills and there are micro skills. So the macro skills are effective relationships, workplace skills, and applied knowledge. All right. So Liz, what is the broad definition of effective relationships?
Pretty much interacting effectively.
Yep, with clients, coworkers, and supervisors, right? It's in effect to, even on our worst days when everything is falling apart at home, we have to come to work and know we have to interact effectively with all of our coworkers. Okay, so the next one, workplace skills. Liz?
The skills employees need to successfully perform work tasks.
And I think this is important to know too, that the employers on the SIAC project said, get them the applied knowledge. Let them be good at the applied knowledge, which we'll see in a minute. We'll teach them the workplace skills that they need. We'll train them, okay? Many of the employers said that. And then the last one is the thoughtful integration of academic knowledge and technical skills put to practical use in the workplace. This is why they got so excited about Standards 2.0, because they wanted their employees ready to go and ready to learn the workplace skills. So, okay, so let's break this down a little bit more. I'm going to have Liz summarize these for me. Here we go, Liz.
Okay, sorry, I'm trying to read it because it's rather small. But so the first one is interpersonal skills, and it's talking about teamwork and meeting customer needs and exercising leadership, resolving conflicts. And then the second portion on the bottom is personal qualities. This is demonstrating responsibility, working independently, demonstrating professionalism and integrity, taking initiative, and having a positive attitude.
Excellent, and I'll take the next slide too, Liz. So thank you so much. And would you all agree, and just put a thumbs up again, would you agree that those personal qualities are probably going to take a little more time to instill in some employees, don't you think? Because depending on the background of our students, they may have struggled. I know I was in the classroom for 11 years, and I taught the younger age group, the 19 to 23, 24, foster care youth, former gang members, at-risk youth. That was really my specialty when I taught for 11 years. And I found that I spent time teaching these skills. Self-discipline was a big one. Learning, willingness to learn, willingness to trust, willingness to have professionalism, taking initiative, teaching them to all of those things. So, some of these take longer than others, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So that's effective relationships. All right, so here we go. We've got our first activity. So thinking about effective relationships that we just talked about, here comes the quality assurance technician again. And now that we've kind of drilled down to what they're going to need to do, here's your job in the chat pod. All right, looking at the first all right, let's bring those up. That would help if I did that for you. Looking at this first industry example, for our sub-area standard A research, which of the skills and qualities would an employee need to demonstrate in performing the duties of this quality assurance technician? So what I want you to do in the chat pod is put the number of the skill. And I want to say that, there's no right or wrong answers here. And if we had time, we could probably argue that, I probably have you argue why you chose which one. So let's take about 40 seconds, and I want you to give me the number in the chat pod for the interpersonal skill and personal qualities you think they need. So if you think they need to work independently, put an 8 in the chat pod. Okay, go ahead, 40 seconds.
I think everyone is reading the statements, and they're probably trying to determine which one to select. So here they're coming in. So we have a number 3, which is exercising leadership. That's the only response we have at this time. Like I mentioned, we have people still reading.
Excellent.
Another
Excellent.
3, we have 6, 8, and 10. So 6 is demonstrates responsibility and self-discipline, works independently, demonstrates integrity. More 8s, 1, working independently. We have a 4 and a 9. Okay, here they come in really quickly. And number 12, takes initiative, negotiates to resolve conflicts. Number 3, exercises leadership. A 7, adapts and shows flexibility. So lots of repeats here, 6, 11, 12, 4, 6, and
Awesome.
8.
Okay, good. All right, so we're going to keep going, and we're going to go on, and I'm going to show you which ones they are. So I think you got a lot of those. A lot of those came up, didn't they, Liz? I think a lot of those came up.
Yes.
What do you think? Okay.
Very
So
much
again, there's no right or wrong. There's no right or wrong answers here. This is something you could do with your own staff if you're thinking about maybe doing some similar things with your staff. This is a really good exercise to do with the staff. So we're going to move on. We are a little bit behind schedule here, so I'm going to try to get us through these next slides. So workplace skills. So we have, I'm going to bring these up, and we're going to just briefly talk about them. There's a lot underneath here. So resource management is really managing all the different deliverables on a job: time, money, materials, personnel. Then we have information. Information is stressful on a job, I think. You need to understand it. You need to organize it. You need to analyze it. You need to communicate it. And you need to know when it needs to go out. And that can be very stressful. Communication. Communicating verbally, listening actively without being defensive, right? Comprehends written material, conveys information in writing, observes carefully. Systems thinking, understands and uses systems, and that could be the whole system. The whole system, or understanding how different systems work together. So how does one department work with another department, or if you work for a company that has a contractor, understanding the different systems. It could also mean a community and all the community partners. Technology use, understands and uses technology. So let's look at construction carpenter, our second example. Maintains records, documents actions, and presents written progress reports. So we talked about that scenario and the accident on the job. So what skills is this person, he or she, going to need? So go ahead and put the number that corresponds to the skills and qualities that you think this position would need. Again, 40 seconds.
So we have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, which is locating information, everything under information use. And then I'm still waiting for other responses. We had more options this time.
Oh, good. We did. We did.
So,
that's okay. Yep.
So we had 4 through 9,
Very
6 and
good.
11, 5 through 9, 11 and 12, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 4 and 3, 1, 13 and 16. 16 is improved systems.
Very
and then
good.
It says plus 14, and then, oh my goodness, we have 3, 5, 8, 9, 11, 12, 14, 15, 17.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. This is making you kind of think about the skills. Hands up if you agree, right? What are they going to need? What are they going to need to accomplish? And this is something you can share with your students too. So let's go ahead and let's look at the answers. And again, every time I look at this, I kind of change them up, but hopefully you'll recognize many of them. So here we go. All right, so under resource management, manages time. And actually, I'm kind of second guessing myself here, and I would have to say probably manages materials. I don't know why that's not there, but I'm going to fix that. So again, this is open to debate. And then this is important. And I know we hit a lot of these, didn't we, Liz? Locates information, organizes information, uses information, and communicates information. We hit a lot of those, didn't we?
Yes, there's a
Okay.
lot of duplication on that.
Awesome. And then conveys information in writing and observes carefully. And I would argue, depending on how bad the accident was or whatever's happening, they're going to have to be able to communicate verbally and listen actively too. So I would probably add that. And then understands and uses the systems, definitely. And then, of course, they have to use technology. All right. So we've talked about your the skills, and I'm blanking on effective relationships, which is that macro skill. Now we've got workplace skills, and let's look at applied knowledge. Now that's broken down into your actual academic skills, which I'm not going to read, and then your critical thinking skills. And guess what? Many of our Standards 2.0 standards cover these in the sub-area standard and the benchmark, okay? So you're going to be hitting the employability skills framework when you address a standard. But don't be afraid to address these outright too as part of your lesson. And remember, the employability skills framework is an overlay that kind of sits on top of the standards and the sub-area standards. Okay, so here we go. Here's our last one for sterile processing technician. And again, they monitor, reads, documents, and interprets parameters for all type of sterilizers to ensure proper function and patient safety. For the sake of time, I'm just going to share with you, and then you can let me know with a thumbs up if you agree. So here we go. Because I know we need to take a stretch break and kind of stretch a little bit. So definitely knows how to read, use writing skills. I almost want to argue that they may need some math, and I think that math could be added. What do you all think? Do you think math could be added? It depends. Yep. I think we agree.
You have
I think
several
we
hands
agree.
up.
Okay. All right. I'm going to make some adjustments, guys. I promise. And I will do that. And then critical thinking skills, thinks critically, makes sound decisions, solves and reasons. And I think those are all there. Okay. All right. Anything you would add to critical thinking skills real quick before we close out this?
I don't see anything in the chat.
All right, excellent. Okay, so are there any questions? Because I have one more thing to show you, and then we're going to do a 10-minute stretch break, which I know is not that long, but we need to get up and stretch a little bit. And if you have a headset and a mic on, like I do, I would encourage you to stand up and listen if you can. I've been known to kind of step in place when I've been on a webinar because I don't sit still. Those of you that know me, I don't sit still very well. All right, so are there questions, Liz? I'm sorry, I forgot.
No, ma'am. No questions.
No, man. Okay.
Time.
All right. So I think we're going to forego this poll. I think we could do this one at the end. Josh, I think I may want to go back to this one at the end. Okay. And I think Josh is listening. So we're going to move past that one for a minute. So I want to bring you to this slide, which we're going to see again when we're closing out. But where does Standards 2.0 fit? Let's look at the big picture for a minute. Standards 2.0, the Standard 2.0, the booklet, primes and facilitates contextualized instruction by providing a resource that allows teachers to create infused content by aligning lessons to the industry examples and detailed work activities, right? And also looking at the employability skills framework. So you're kind of looking at all of these when you contextualize instruction. You've got your Standards 2.0. You can use the employability skills, and you can think about those industry examples when you build a lesson. And then think about where you can go to get resources. And we'll share a very good resource during webinar 2. If you've joined many of the Tech and Tells, there are wonderful resources. I'm going to go ahead and let Liz put ReadWorks and Common Lit in the chat pod. If you're not familiar with those 2 resources, please go check them out. And PBS Learning Media, you know, is available. And let's see here. Let me go to this next slide. So when you're planning for Standards 2.0 lessons, during this project, when we rolled it out, we created a lesson planning form for you. It's a Standards 2.0 template. And email me and I will send you the Word document, which you can adapt if you would like. And this is Handout 2 in your packet. And I want to draw your attention to just a couple things. At the beginning of webinar 1, I shared that you want to start with your standard first. So at the top of this lesson plan, you can see right away that they want you to identify the standard. And then you have an opportunity to think about the academic skills you'll be addressing in the standard. And then what is the connection to the occupational content if you're contextualizing a lesson? So thinking about that example on the job, the construction carpenter supervisor position, what is the connection to the occupational content? What is the scenario? What is the lesson going to be about? What are they doing on the job? And then what are those employability skills? And those employability skills can come from the industry example, but also the employability skills framework. And then it asks you to identify essential questions. And the essential question for that example would be, you know, how does an employer handle an emergency on a job or an accident on the job? Then you have your lesson objective and then your level objectives, so you can scaffold it. And then the evidence of a learning assessment, and then materials needed. And then the second page is what I'm sure all of you have seen before in one way or form or another, is what's called a direct explicit lesson, where you do a warm-up, you do an introduction, you do a presentation, you do modeling, guided practice, independent practice, assessment, etc. It is called the I do, we do, y'all do model. Okay, I do, we do, you do, sorry. Okay, so I'm going to take another deep breath here and I'm going to go over the objectives one more time, and I'm going to see if there's any questions, and I'm going to stop to see if there are any questions, but let's look at these objectives. Did we recognize the new work activities and industry examples in the standards? Did we do that, everybody? Did we go over the detailed work activities and industry examples?
And we have people raising their hands, yes.
Very good. Did we relate the work skills and activities to the employability skills framework?
Yep, people are raising their hands. Thank you.
Good. And then did we recognize new components of a Standards 2.0 lesson template? Now, let me take a step back and share with you that this is an introductory training, but I did develop a more in-depth training where we do a lot more work with the lesson plan. So reach out to your PD coordinator if that's something you think that you need. We do have trainers, and right now, you know, it would be a virtual training, but we certainly, there are certainly resources available. And I'm not sure if Angie Mudd is on the webinar. I hope she is. And she is actually one of our Standards 2.0 trainers. So she was trained to deliver this as well. I'm not sure if she's here, but Angie, let me know in the chat pod if you are.
She is
And
here.
Okay, Angie. All right. So, because I'm so excited that Angie's here. And all right. So here's my email, and we are at 9:15. And actually, we did do this on time. And at this time, what I would like to do is this is our official break, and it is 10:17. And I would like you to come back at 10:27, and I'm going to put a stopwatch up unless there are questions. We've got a little room for questions here. So before we go to break, are there questions?
There are not any questions at this time, Anne-Marie. However, there were people asking about copies of the handouts, the presentation slides, and those can be found on the main page. When you go into the Literacy Texas schedule and you select this session, you'll find that the handouts are at the bottom. If you scroll down to the bottom, right before you click on a webinar link, you'll be able to find those handouts, and they'll be available throughout the rest of the day today.
Okay, and I cannot believe there's 99 people on this webinar with me right now. So I want to say thank you, and let's go ahead, and I'm going to start the stopwatch. It's 10:18, so we're going to come back at 10:28, and I will see you all on the flip side. Don't go away, because we got more to come. All right, thanks everybody, and I'm going to turn my video on real quick, and I'm just going to say hi to everybody. I don't even know if I can see it. So, all right, guys, I'll see you back in 10 minutes. All right. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Or not bye-bye, but back in 10 minutes. I'm going to put the stopwatch up. Okay, Josh or Liz, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, Liz, can you see the timer on the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm not muted. I'm muted. We have about, well, it's probably our time is up now. And I have exactly 10:30. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And I want to see how many people are back. Is it most people are back? Oh, hold on, everybody. That's not good. Hold on. Okay, note to self, remember to turn off your your online stopwatch. All right. All right, so I have hands up of people that are already back. Okay, good, wonderful.
Yes.
All
And we
right.
have people messaging that they're back also.
Okay, good. So note to self, if you're doing a virtual training, to remember to turn off your stopwatch so that you don't scare yourself half to death when you when you go back into the room. All right. So did I lose people? Because I have 45 participants and I had 99. Liz,
No, ma'am.
what happened?
I only saw 45 from the very beginning.
Okay, good, because I was like, oh, all right. It's like,
No,
oh
we're good.
no. All right, here we go. We're gonna get going. So I'm glad everyone's back. And if you have a question, when we get to our first stopping point, please go ahead and ask it. And I see Kay is here from McLennan. Kay, it's wonderful to have you here. All right, so I'm going to stop looking at the chat pod and we need to get going. I'm going to turn off my video camera. So here we go, everybody.
And while you're loading your slides, Annemarie, I do want to make a few announcements. First of all, someone was asking for the recording. And so Josh from Literacy, Texas said that that will be made available. It's not available at this time, but it will, participants will be notified when that is made available once I get that set up. And if you do not have access to the handouts, don't worry. They're still available. You can go to the main page where you found this session. And when you scroll down, you'll be able to find out all the handouts there. Okay?
Yep. And remember, and I think this bears repeating, first of all, I want to give a big shout out to Liz for doing such a phenomenal job helping me moderate this. So everybody, let's give her a big thumbs up in the chat pod because she's doing an amazing job. I'm asking her to do quite a bit and I cannot do this without her. So thank you. Second of all, I am not going anywhere, everybody. The greatest honor you can give me is if you reach out to me via email and ask for my help, okay? So if you still can't access those materials, email me and I will send them to you, all right? Okay, so here we go. So we are at webinar 2, which is the second part of this training, and we're gonna have 2 5-minute Q&A sessions. If I think there's a question I can answer or Liz thinks it's an easy question, I'm going to give her the green light to interrupt me so that I can answer the question. Now, this is still considered an overview and not a deep dive. We're going to go a little deeper into this one. So it's probably a little bit deeper than what the description said, but we're still not going to actually create a lesson plan. We're going to look at some lessons, but we're not going to do that deep of a dive. So keep that in mind as we move through this next 75 minutes. All right, so these are the training norms again. I think we're all good to go with those. So I'm going to move past this slide. And here are our webinar objectives. And we have 2 webinar objectives for this 75 minutes. And what we are going to do is we're going to identify, which is really cool, by the way, we're going to identify categories for a new Standards 2.0 rubric for evaluating lessons. This is also in your packet, and I can send this to you via email, but you have been provided the rubric, and that is handout number 3. We are going to evaluate existing lesson plans, and I want to say this, they're not full lesson plans. We're going to take a look at part of a lesson and part of an ESL lesson and part of a math lesson. But the idea is to get you familiar with using the rubric. And then we're going to also think about the employability skills framework again, and also thinking about how all this relates to Standards 2.0. Okay, all right. Now, I don't think there's anyone new to the table, but did anybody join us or join late and didn't have an opportunity to introduce themselves? Because it seems like I've got about 45 or 46 participants with me, and I'm wondering if there was anyone new that joined, and I want to welcome you if there is. And let me know in the chat pod or raise your virtual hand if there's anybody new. And Liz will let me know if
I'm monitoring and I don't see any new folks,
Okay.
but it could be that they're shy.
Okay, and I see Nancy has raised her hand.
Oh, yes, she
Nancy
just
Laws.
did.
Okay, so Nancy, when did you join? Just late, or did you see part of the first webinar? Let me know real quick. All right, well, okay, so I think she just responded. Okay.
She said no, she didn't.
She didn't go to webinar 1?
She didn't say.
Okay, that's all right. Well, we're glad you're here, Nancy. You'll catch on. No worries. Okay, so welcome back. Like I said, with everybody that's come back, and I hope you had some protein during your your 10-minute break, because I'm going to quiz you. Notice my little guy on the treadmill here, and we're going to have our first participant review exercise. So during webinar 1, we discussed 3 new additions to the Texas AEL Standards 2.0 book, or AKA Standards 2.0. What are they? Before, it was just the standards. So what was added to it? And I will give you about 30 seconds in the chat pod to respond. So what are the new additions to the Standards 2.0 book?
Okay. They're typing their way.
I'm
So we
trying
do
not
have
to.
one response.
Okay.
No, and it says Onet, right? They listed Onet.
Almost.
The Onet, the
what
standards.
From Onet? What from Onet? What
the critical
from Onet?
elements.
Very good. Good.
The
okay.
detailed work, the DWA.
Mm-hmm.
Skills framework.
Okay, good. Not part of the Standards 2.0. I'm glad that someone said that. The Employability Skills framework is not part of Standards 2.0, but you can think of it as an overlay, okay? So I kind of want to clear that up a little bit. That is, you can use that when you're building your lessons, but it's not actually in Standards 2.0. So here are the 3 new additions. And someone said Onet elements or skills. That is included in the Standards 2.0 book. And remember, that applies to an entire sub area, right? Then we've got our detailed work activities, and the detailed work activities align to the industry examples, and they relate only to a sub area standard. So that's important to remember. And then you've got your industry examples. So those are your new sections in Standards 2.0. Your employability skills framework is just an overlay that is kind of just a wide way of looking at the skills you should be addressing whenever you develop a Standards 2.0 lesson. All right, let's go ahead and participant review exercise number 2. Name at least 5 of the Onet critical elements or skills that are included in various ELA and ESL standards. Actually, the Onet critical elements and skills are not included in the math standards, okay? They address digital literacy. They talk about the digital literacy skills that are embedded in the math standards, but your Onet critical elements and skills are only present in your ELA and ESL standards. So name at least 5 of them. What did y'all come up with? Oh, Linda's raising her hand. Okay, I think it's just confirmation, I think.
So I'm looking at the chat pod and we don't have any responses yet, but
here we come.
They're coming in. Yeah, they're coming in. So Linda says attention to details.
Very good.
Reading comprehension.
Mm-hmm.
Writing, says Darlene Smith.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
They're coming in. They're coming in. Written expressions is also
Very
what Linda
good.
added.
Mm-hmm. Okay, about 5 more seconds. Very good. When it pops up orange, I know you are all responding, so thank you. I don't want you to get bored. Got to keep you on your toes. This last 75 minutes is very interactive. You guys are going to be responding in the chat pod quite a bit for the next
So we
75
have
minutes.
details, listening skills, interpersonal
Good.
skills, written expression, workplace skills, applied knowledge, interpersonal
Good.
skills. They're
Excellent.
all coming in now. They're all
Okay.
coming in.
All right. So remember that the Educational Testing Service decided that these critical skills, these critical elements or skills are imperative across all of your industries. Okay? Your 4 industries, right? So here they come, and you got most of them. Active listening. Remember, some of these are your skills that are part of the employability skills framework, right? Those are your your ability to interact with people, effective relationships, cooperation. Then you've got your applied academic skills. So this is an example of how the employability skills framework kind of lays on top of these, because you could fit these skills into the employability skills framework, couldn't you? They fall under effective relationships, and they're, workplace skills, but they're also applied academic. All right, very good. All right, so, this is my favorite part. I'm so excited to introduce you to this beautiful woman that I am so happy to call my friend as well. She has been so instrumental in being part of Standards 2.0. So let me share with you who this is. Do you remember during webinar 1 when I discussed how the Standards 2.0 booklet was created? And experts from both the education and industry side of the house came together during the SIAC project to align the first edition of the Texas content standards to high demand industry clusters. Well, Diana Contreras was one of these professionals who worked as a subject matter expert for the industry cluster, transportation, distribution, and logistics. She was part of that working group. All right. So we're going to watch a video featuring Diana Contreras. She is the director of distribution and general manager of Dollar General Corporation. And many of you probably know how supportive Dollar General is of adult education. Diana is a passionate supporter of the Standards 2.0 project and continues to advocate for adult education and literacy and continued partnerships between adult education and private sector employees. Okay, so before we show the video, I want to do 2 things. There are 4 employer videos on the Standards 2.0 webpage for you to look at a different time. I would play these for your students in the classroom or in a Zoom virtual class. So Liz is going to put the link to the Standards 2.0 page, and we're going to go there in a minute because we're going to watch a video with Diana. Okay, so Liz is going to put that in the chat pod. But before we do that, I want to review some questions with you because you're going to be listening to the answers to these questions. So let me share these questions now. And all right, so this is Diana Contreras, and here are 2 questions I want you to consider. Diana discusses specific skills Dollar General employees need. So your first question is, what are they? And if Liz can move fast enough, because I know she moves fast, maybe she can grab the questions and put them in the chat pod so you can look at them in the chat pod. So what are the skills that she discusses? And then what other pearls of wisdom, I like to call it, does Diana share during the interview? All right. So what are the skills that they need to bring if they want a job at Dollar General? And then what are the other pearls of wisdom does Diana share? And Liz, let me know when those questions are in the chat pod.
Yes, I'll let you know when I
Okay.
see anything. Sorry.
All
I
right,
couldn't
awesome.
unmute myself.
That's okay, but the questions are in the chat pod, right? Those
Yes.
questions?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yes,
you're
ma'am.
awesome. All right, so I'm going to hold on everyone, and I'm going to bring this up. All right.
My name is Diana Contreras.
All right, first of all, Liz, can you see the video?
Yes, and you can hear it well.
Wonderful, thank you.
I'm currently with Dollar General Corporation in San Antonio, Texas, and I am the Senior Director of Distribution there. For the transportation, distribution, and logistics industry, there is an overwhelming demand for entry-level and intermediate workers. It's everywhere. The competition is so high that we're all fighting for everybody. So we're all out there at job fairs looking at each other's booths going, man, I need to get those people in here. So it's out there, and we need them. Not only just employees, but exempt as well. And we don't only want to bring them in, we want to keep them. But there's an overwhelming demand. In transportation, distribution, and logistics, depending on what employer we're with, now it is an employer's market to cater to the employee. So a lot of the industry, they will have train-the-trainer courses that'll start you out. They'll have ESL classes, they will have GED classes, they'll have certifications, they will have leadership development programs. And from there, the sky's the limit. If you want to work in the medical side, you can do that. If you want to work in the training side, accounting, demand chain, supply chain, anything you want to do, it's here for them. We need truck drivers. That's probably going to be the fastest growing career opportunity in the next 5 years. We know that in the state of Texas, in the next 24 months, there's going to be a need for about 20% more drivers. Nationwide, it's 6%. So that's a hard industry. It's not glamorous to be a truck driver, but it's essential and we need it. If we can't get product to the stores, we're not going to have revenue. There's not going to be jobs. It's a circular motion all the way around. We've piloted a program, and a lot of employers do this across the industry. It's not just Dollar General, but a lot of employers say, hey, if we have employees that are interested in truck driving, they will take and send them to school, pay for the schooling, pay for them to work there, and then give them a contract to drive. So yes, truck driving is a very lucrative, it is a very promising career. Communication and people skills are very, very important. With the transportation, distribution, and logistics industry, most of the time if you're working in a facility, you need to be able to communicate and partner with them, but you need to have respect for each other too. So the collaboration, the cooperation has to be there. It's very important to get the job done. What happens yesterday is not going to happen today, and what happens today will not happen tomorrow. You're never going to get the same day just alike. That's another thing that makes it very interesting, is it changes day to day. We all know that technology is the wave of the future, and everyone has got to get on board with technology. You cannot be stagnant. If you're stagnant, you're going to be looking in the rearview mirror. So we have to get on board with technology. We can teach the technical side. Once they come in, people are resilient. They're smart, they'll learn from you. They just need a chance.
Okay. All right, hold on everybody. I am sorry, hold on. I gotta bring this up here. All right, so think about the questions and it'll just be a minute.
We have lots of responses already.
Oh, yay. So go ahead and share those with me while I'm trying to I'll make sure I have this ready for us.
So I know that you had 2 questions, and you said Diana discusses specific skills Dollar General employees need. What are they? And what other pearls of wisdom does Diana share during the interview? So some of the responses are communication and people skills, truck drivers, communication skills, change is always,
awesome.
Technology is a must, technology, specific skills, collaboration and communication. The pearl is bring in the people and keep them. I love that. And then Giamata says people skills, teamwork, technology, and resiliency. cooperation.
Wow, you guys are awesome. Okay. Yeah, so did you guys like that? Did you guys like seeing that video? And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause this share again and hope I do not completely mess this up. And let me just see something real quick here. And all right, let's see here. Liz, can you see the screen?
Yes, you're sharing a website?
Yep. Okay. So
Yes, ma'am.
this is, thank you so much. This is the Standards 2.0 page that I was sharing with you all. And I just want to show you something really quickly. Here are three more industry partners. Jim Bland, or Scott Bland, excuse me, is the owner of Jim Bland Construction. And he actually left a job with the Secret Service to come help his dad, who started the Jim Bland Construction Company in Texas. Wonderful. He was on the project, SIAC project. He's got a great story to tell you. J.R. Gamble works for Klein Tools, another homegrown Texas company. He's got a completely different perspective than Diana. And I'll let you watch that. I would share these with your students. And then finally, Jackie Brandt, she is a go-getter. Believe it or not, everybody, she started out as an adult education teacher, and she has her own healthcare consulting company. So check it out. Check these out when you have a chance. I'm very proud of these videos and very proud to know all of these people, and they continue to support adult education every day. Okay, so I'm going to pause share. We're going to go back to this and hope that it does not mess up. All right, am I back on the PowerPoint?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. All right, so you guys were spot on about what you shared that you heard Diana talk about. And she talked about communication and people skills, collaboration and cooperation. And she said Dollar General can teach the technical skills. They need applicants to come with the interpersonal skills. But my favorite, most of all, was the technology comment. No looking in the rearview mirror, right? And then also it's an employee market. And right now with COVID-19, the pandemic that we're in, truck drivers still have to drive trucks. So that continues to be a position that they have a hard time filling. Okay, so let's keep going. Now, we're going to switch gears and we're going to get into some detail about the rubric, the new Standards 2.0 rubric. But I wanted to summarize something, and this comes right from the Standards 2.0 book. And the current Standards 2.0 aligns the 2016 Texas Adult Education and Literacy Content Standards to the knowledge, skills, and abilities required for success in in-demand, or actually in-demand, entry, and intermediate level jobs. Standards 2.0 aims to illustrate how the standards are relevant to work while maintaining the competencies needed to prepare students for educational progress and transition to post-secondary education. This is accomplished by bridging those academic standards that were used to be in the Green Book to the crosswalks that define the specific knowledge and skills and abilities required for work. I took that right from the introduction of the standards, and I wanted to share that with you because I think it's always important. So that's why I have those pictures. It's not about job one way and education the other. It's how can we incorporate both of them. So contextualizing and really looking at those employability skills and using those standards to address what we know students need for whatever job that they're going to go into. So that's why I call this alignment and connection. All right. Okay, so how can we 2.0 the lessons we already have? Do we really have to start from scratch? And what do we need to add? Now, this was a very much a stressor for teachers when we rolled out Standards 2.0. Oh my gosh, I've got all these lesson plans and you want me to start all over again. Not at all. A lot of teachers, you know, I'm biased. I consider myself a Texan now. I've been here 11 years and I married a Texan and I'm proud to be a Texan. And I have to say that Texas teachers are some of the most resilient I've ever met. And I've worked in California and I've traveled all over the country. And I think we have got resilient teachers. You give them a challenge and they meet it every single time. And adult education teachers are known for that. We're known for our ability to turn on a dime. Don't you agree? Especially during COVID. I think we have shown to be a resilient bunch. So as far as the lessons, it's not about starting from scratch. It's about taking the lessons that you have and adapting them to address the new standards and possibly integrating, you know, to an occupation. Okay. So how do we do that? If we want to look at the lessons we already have, what can we do? Well, during the Standards 2.0 project, the consultants that were hired to create all of these materials developed a rubric, and it's a Standards 2.0 rubric. And so the Standards 2.0 rubric is to help you determine how well current lesson plans you are using may be aligned to the ESL, ELA, or math standards and Standards 2.0. And also have you critically evaluate your lessons using other categories to help you analyze how well you are contextualizing a lesson to meet both the academic and employment goals of your students. So the rubric has you look at how well you're meeting Standards 2.0, but it looks at other things. So let's look at the categories, and then we'll dig in a little deeper and look at the rubric. So notice on the screen that there is a handout icon that says handout number 3. And in your packet, the rubric, the Standards 2.0 rubric, is handout number 3. And again, I can send that to you via email, or you can download it from the CVent app. It's a beautiful copy in the CVent app, so it should work for you, but I can send it to you as well. So there are 7 categories. The first category is the degree of alignment to Standards 2.0, the actual standards. The next category is employability skills. That is your employability skills, maybe of your industry example, but also of the employability skills framework. And for today's training, when we talk about employability skills with the rubric, we're talking about the employability skills framework. And then what about the quality of the content? And what can you do with the content? The utility of the materials ask you to think about how you can change it, make it different. Does your lesson have quality assessment? And by that, it means what types of assessment are you doing? Are you doing formative assessment all the way through your lesson? Are you doing a diagnostic assessment on the front end? And what are you doing as well for a summative assessment, which is that final assessment, okay? And then quality of technology activities. Is there an opportunity to use technology, or is there already technology embedded into it? And then opportunities for deeper learning in the rubric challenges you to look at the lesson for critical thinking. What is the ability of the lesson for students to tap into, you know, really that metacognition, using their critical thinking skills and things like that. So that really gets into those, and you'll see that on the rubric. All right, Liz, are there any questions so far? Are we okay?
We are good. Everything's just about the handouts, but we're good.
Okay, all right, okay. So this is the rubric and it's 2 pages. So you have got 4 categories here, and then you have another 4, another 3 on the back. And actually there's supposed to be a line right here, so I'm not sure what happened there, but that's okay. All right, so you've got degree of alignment, and here's your categories on the far left-hand side. That's your column. And then this is a Likert scale rubric, which means you score it from a 4 to a 1, or is it not applicable? And then you can put the score in the notes section. Okay, so you go through and you look at your lesson holistically. So as a teacher, you could start using this rubric once you download it from the app. You could start using this handout next week or tomorrow if you're teaching classes tomorrow, or in a couple days from now, start looking at in your rubric. If you've got teachers that you want to train, share the rubric with them. And so each one of these categories is scored. So let's say I'm looking at a math lesson, and I think the degree of alignment to Standards 2.0 hits on a sub-area standard. It's very, very strong. I could give it a 4 and put the 4 over here. Okay. Now, for the purposes of this training today, we're only going to look at one category in the rubric. We're not going to use this whole rubric because that would be too overwhelming. So we're going to look at just one category, but I wanted to show it to you. So let's look at the second page. Now here we have quality of assessment, quality of technology activity, and then this opportunities for deeper learning. And this really again gets into, are you giving them the opportunity for students to use those deeper learning skills and really work on their critical thinking? And having my master's in special education, I will tell you that when you get into this category, this becomes very challenging for students with learning disabilities. They struggle in this area. So if you can develop a lesson that gives them opportunities to practice, to talk out loud, get them, asking questions, it will help them greatly because they need that. They need that practice. And so do our ESL students, I would argue, need that practice. So here is your rubric. All right. So now what we're going to do is we are going to look at a lesson using the rubric I just showed you. All right. And we're going to start with an ESL lesson. Okay. And before we go any further, we're going to put some stuff in the chat pod. We're going to review a lesson from the Minnesota Literacy Council. How many of you are familiar with the Minnesota Literacy Council? Have you gone and looked at the materials? Very good, Linda. That's great I can see Linda. So raise your, give me a thumbs up if you are familiar with the Minnesota Literacy Council.
Yes, raise your hand, your virtual hand, and then in the chat we have 2 yeses, 1 not much.
Okay.
You have another virtual hand.
Very good. Okay, so it is Christmas in August, everybody. It's Christmas in August because I will share with you that the Minnesota Literacy Council provides online curriculum and lesson plans for ESL and GED that you can download, and they are free. And they are always updating their lessons. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to share with you that this lesson is part of a lesson, and it is in your handout packet, and it's called My Daughter is Sick. This is a lesson, again, if you're teaching tomorrow or Friday or next week, you could download this entire lesson and use it with your students, develop a lesson plan using the template I gave you, and you will know what standard this addresses by the time we're done as well. So where do you download this? Well, I'm going to give you the direct link to the Story Bank handout. And these are called stories. This is called the story bank, and there's many of them. And so Liz will put the link in the chat pod right now. I encourage you to check out the GED lessons as well. In math and in other subjects, they're wonderful. They have done incredible work in Minnesota to develop this website. All right, so the next link I'm going to have Liz put in the chat pod for me is to the direct link to the Minnesota Literacy Council project. And this will show you everything. It'll give you a lay of the land of where you want to go. Okay, so are we ready? Are we ready? Everybody ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at this lesson, but beforehand, I want to show you what part of the rubric we're going to be looking at. All right, so forget about all of the categories except for that second category for now. And this is to the extent to which materials teach employability skills. I know this is hard to see, so on the next slide, I'm going to expand it for you. Right? So we are focusing on just one category. Employability, extent to which materials teach employability skills. So here we go. Now I'm going to have Liz lend her voice to superior. What would be a 4, Liz? How would it have to have a 4?
So the material explicitly connects to industry context and more than one category of employability skills.
Okay, so you could use your industry example in the standards or whatever industry you're contextualizing a lesson around, right? So think about, you know, if you've got a lot of medical assistants in your classroom, what can you do to this lesson to contextualize it around an industry? And then think about the employability skills. And then it goes down from there. So superior, and then strong is a 3, limited is a 2, and very weak or none is a 1. Like all rubrics, don't overthink this. Okay, because first of all, we're only seeing a snapshot of the lesson because of the time, and the best way to use a rubric is holistically. You don't want to try to pick it apart, or I'm not sure any materials would ever get anything other than a 2 or a 1. So, you know, think holistically when we look at this. Okay, so here is your employability skills framework. Because we are looking at the extent to which these materials teach employability skills, this is what I want you to keep in mind. What is this lesson hitting? From effective relationships, workplace skills, or applied knowledge. And remember, those are your macro skills. The ones in the green, that army green color, are your macro skills. And then your micro skills are all of those skills embedded underneath. Okay, we talked about this during webinar 1. And this is handout 1 in your packet. All right, so this is my daughter is sick. And the first thing this lesson does, and actually let me take a step back, we're not going to actually do this lesson. We are not going to actually do this lesson. We are going to talk about this lesson, but we're not going to model it. I'm not going to pretend to be the teacher, and you're not going to pretend to be the students. We're just going to talk about this lesson. So in this lesson, in the packet that was provided in your handout packet, the first thing you do with this lesson is to develop the context. So the focus of this ESL lesson is discussing the illness of a child and trying to communicate this to the child's school personnel. This is a lesson for beginning ESL students, so think about how challenging that is for them. They will practice survival English, such as using the phone, trying to explain their child's absence, and even trying to navigate who to talk to and how to use maybe even their smartphone if they have to, you know, decide what number to push and who to leave a message for. Okay, so that's the background of this lesson. Now, step one is to develop the context with the students. And some questions you could ask would be, do you have children? Do they go to school? Do you call the school sometimes? What do you do when they are sick? And the reason I have the image of this this girl here with the puzzles, because you're helping the students put this together in their mind. They're building context because of what we're going to ask them to do later on. And when you download this lesson from the Minnesota Literacy Council, they'll take you step by step how to do this. Now, this right here in step 2, how many ESL teachers do I have? Quite a few again, right? Raise your hand if you're an ESL teacher. And I want you to help me out here because ESL, I never taught ESL.
So we have about 9 people raising their hand. Oh, more than 9. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So this is called picture story elicitation. And this comes from the language experience approach. And basically, the language experience approach says that picture stories are wonderful to use with beginning ESL students and ESL students in general. Do you guys use a lot of pictures when you're teaching your ESL students? Yes, Linda, thank you so much. You guys are awesome, by the way. I wish I could just see you all. You guys have been amazing. And so we do use pictures. So what you do with this picture story elicitation is that the students build the story. The teacher doesn't. So it's a matter of drawing out from the student what they see in the picture, and then the story builds from there. So every picture frame, you have to draw out questions because the teacher is going to write them down. Okay, and the LEA, this particular strategy promotes speaking, listening, reading, and writing. So I see a lot of good academic skills going on here. So think about that, you know, when you're thinking about the rubric. So in the first question, what do you see here? Ask the students about that question. I mean, about that picture. And then the next question, and I do apologize, it's a little blurry here. I will fix that, but you get the idea. This is a school. And so ask them, what is this building? Why do you have to go there? Who do you have to talk to? And then I am sure you can agree that the possibilities are endless when it comes to the amount of responses you will get from ESL students as they create a story from these pictures, which is what's so awesome about it. And then, of course, this is a telephone. Mind you, I would argue that they're going to have a smartphone in their hand, right? What if they don't use their smartphone very often? I'm sorry, but some of these smartphones can be a little confusing, right? So navigating the phone. And again, the questions could be, you know, what are they going to do? Who are they going to call? What do they do if they can't get through to someone? How do they critically think through that? Do they have to drive to the school? All those different things. All right, so once they've developed a picture, step 3 is silent reading. And here is where they've developed the story. So here's the dialogue, and they silently read what they themselves have come up with. That's step 3. Step 4 is the teacher reads and the learners follow. And this is all the language experience approach. And so I'm going to stop here at step 4. Liz, any questions? Are we okay? Because I see orange flashing, which means questions or comments.
Yes, no, they're saying, tell me about this picture. Mm-hmm. So they're referring to the question.
Okay, good. Very good. Very good. So, so step 3, they read silently. Step 4, the teacher reads and the learners follow. And you can see here that we've got scaffolding going on, right? Because the teacher's reading and the learners are following. Now the teacher reads and the learner repeats So now we hear their voice. And then choral reading, which means they do it together, just like in a choir, choral reading. And then finally, oh, we've got 2 more steps. Learners read with a partner. And then learners complete comprehension exercise, okay, which is individual. And this entire packet, as well as the lesson plan, is downloadable. But I gave you this part in the handout packet that's on the CVent app. All right, so now it is your turn to grade this lesson. And again, I know that this was just a snapshot, but I would like you to tell me what you think, what is the score for just this lesson on this rubric for just that category, okay? And does everybody have the link to the handout, or does Liz need to put it in the chat pod again? Everybody got that link? Everybody have the link, Liz?
No, I'm going to grab it and put it in there.
Okay. All right. So Liz is going to grab the link again to this lesson. My child is sick. And actually, the link is going to take you to the entire ESL story bank of all different lessons. All right. So while Liz is doing that, we have focused our attention to that category of the rubric. So now I want to take about 40 seconds in the chat pod, and if I need to go back to a page in the lesson, let me know. And I want you to score this lesson. I want you to score the lesson using this rubric for just this category. Do you think it's a 4, a 3, a 2, or 1, or it doesn't even address it? So go ahead. I'm going to be quiet for just 1 minute.
So there's a request if you could go back. I guess they're wanting to go back to the story. I'm not sure what Patty
Which
refers
one?
to.
Patty, help me out. Where do you need me to go? Which slide?
And so she hasn't responded yet, but we do have a response from someone else indicating that they would score it a 2. Someone else said a 4. Patty says you're good. I think that's what she wanted.
Good. Okay.
So we have a 2 and a 4.
All right.
Far.
Well, there's a
3?
whole bunch of other people. Come on now. I need more. I need more.
3. A 2, a 4. It says that the steps are so helpful. You know, and this is a really good time just to practice, you know, because you might think it's a 3, and then once we have a discussion, you'll find out we'll be able to recalibrate. So we have 4, 2, 3.
Very good. Very good. And Liz brings up an excellent point, and I've given her the right to interrupt me at any time and use her expertise with ESL and teaching in general, because she's a rock star, and she knows I believe that she is. So so we want to think about employability skills, and I think this will help you understand when I show you what myself, the actual developers that created this training, and other Standards 2.0 trainers gave it. And we gave it a 2. Okay, so think about this. The material may implicitly address some employability skills and some industry content, but the connection is not well developed. Does that make a little more sense now? So there were some employability skills, right? Using the phone, having to talk to people, but it wasn't explicit. Okay, people agreeing in the chat pod, Liz, or do we have more 2s? Definitely not a 4, because it's not specifically directed, and that's what we're going to do now, is we're going to talk about how do we make it a 4. Okay.
I think that most of the responses were 3s, but I think that the explanation probably assisted for the next activity.
Exactly. So the material implicitly addresses industry content and several employability skills. You know what? I could see why you would know. You could say that. So maybe like a 2.5. But I think a 3 or a 2, but we're going to make it a 4. That's the goal of what we're going to do next. So now here are the skills that I felt were present to make it a 2. Uses reading skills, uses writing skills. I think we could expand this a little bit more. Critical thinking skills. She's got to think critically just in order to use the darn phone, don't you think? I mean, and I know that I would love to learn Spanish. At one point, I could understand it pretty well, but I want to learn it again. But if she's calling, sometimes, even in Spanish or in English, they talk very fast. So she may not understand what button to push. So applied academic skills, communication skills, definitely, all of them. Demonstrates responsibility and self-discipline, understands and uses technologies. I'll update this a little bit. Do you see anything else that stands out that I missed before we move on?
So there's just a comment that says she has to think about what she's going to say.
Yes. So thinking critically. Okay. All right. We're going to keep moving only because of time. All right. Are there questions, or can we keep on moving on?
No questions at this time.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay. So, all right, here we go. We keep going because we're a little bit behind. All right. So how can we standards 2.0 this ESL lesson to include more employability skills? So I guess the question is, how do we make this a 4? So this is going to be a lot of fun because you guys are going to do all the work now. You're going to help me. So let's see what standard this is, though. So if you were going to go to your standards 2.0 book, we would be in content area 3, remember 1, 2, and 3, Roman numerals, and we would have sub area standard 2, which is speaking skills. And our sub area standard would be E. Our sub area standard, remember, is always a letter, and it's demonstrate appropriate speaking skills for persuading or discussing. The DWA that applies here is carry out work-related conversation using polite fixed expressions. She's going to need to be able to communicate in a workplace setting, remain calm, remain polite. Industry example, advanced manufacturing, first line supervisor. But you could put another industry in there, right? You could put another industry in there. Confer with supervisors to coordinate operations activities within or between departments. So thinking about an employment in an employability context, how can we make this lesson a 4? So we're going to have to switch the context. So let's see. How would you add career context? Think for not about a minute, for about 40 seconds. And I want you to provide specific examples. How could you include the career context for this lesson? Type your examples in the chat pod.
So I'm waiting for some of the responses. One of the responses needs to speak in English. They're typing.
Okay, needs to speak in English. Okay, but career context. They need to speak in English, but in what context to that user?
David Height says reason for call.
Good. But still for the home environment, or how could you put it into the work environment, I guess is what I'm asking. Who would they be calling? Instead of the school, who would they be calling? So let's say she had a husband that was at home and was sick. Who would she have to be calling for her husband? It wouldn't, well, maybe school, but I'm thinking work. Who would she have to call?
So reason for call is work, to advocate.
Very good. Very good. What else?
Everyone's shy.
I know. You guys are probably getting a little tired. I know everybody's getting hungry.
Rosita Cordova says speak to the supervisor. Linda says call one
Very
and give
good.
specific reason for missing. Martine says I would add a role play for another student to answer the call
Excellent.
and respond as if they were the school employee. Ruth says call his supervisor. Husband's work. There we go.
Very good. Okay, so you guys are on the right track. So let me share this with you. These are some ideas. Call, instead of calling the school, remember you're trying to make it focused on career. So call into work for someone else. Call into work to discuss another issue. That's a good one. So Martine said role playing. So you could role play to discuss another issue. Now, here are some other issues that you could role play with your higher level ESL students. Injury on the job or conflict with a coworker, right? That's reality. These things come up, don't they? Thumbs up. What do you think about that? So this would be a way to take this lesson and 2.0 it. And use the same activity, change the pictures though, to reflect work, to reflect a supervisor, an argument among two people, that type of thing. All right, so let's keep going. Now, remember, we're talking about employability skills. So we talked about workplace or career content. So what about your interpersonal skills? How would you add interpersonal skills to this lesson? And let's get some more examples. Think for about a minute again. And what interpersonal skills would you need to add? These are not easy, I know. I'm going to take a sneak at the chat pod here. And my chat pod disappeared. I don't know. Okay.
So we
my
have
chat
here,
pod keeps disappearing.
Have her take her temperature, read the thermometer, being polite.
Okay, being polite. Not thermometer and taking her temperature because that's work environment. So how about the work environment? Not so much thermometer and taking her temperature.
How
that
about
would be
staying
great.
calm when you're a little panicked, or ask about doctor notes?
Excellent. Very good. That's kind of what I'm looking for. Yep. Being able to be able to get your point across. Exactly. So let's look at some
deal with Bree, but I don't know what that means.
Deal with Bree.
Like BRI. Explain the seriousness of, I think they're pressing enter and then it kind of cuts off.
Okay, so interpersonal skills. We know that interpersonal skills are both internal and your ability to work with other people. So to add interpersonal skills to this lesson, you could answer questions. You could answer questions. What department? Who is your supervisor? So you have to be able to answer these types of questions. Add a conflict that you need to explain calmly and clearly. So I'm not sure who brought that one up about the calmly and clearly, but that is a very good point. So if you have to talk to a supervisor about a conflict with an employee or something that's going on, you have to be able to explain the conflict, right? So that speaking English is going to be very important. And then what kind of conflict do you have to explain? You are missing a big deadline. Report a sensitive issue. Okay. All ways to work on interpersonal skills. And I would have your employability skills framework out when you were tweaking this lesson so you could see the micro skills to kind of tweak them a little bit. All right, here are some more suggestions for interpersonal skills. Explain the deadline you were supposed to meet. Suggest who can help complete the task. Offer to be available by phone. Explain sensitive issue with more details. So you could scaffold your students in this lesson and have simpler scenarios or simpler, role role playing with some students and make it more difficult for others. And then, all right, so we are here at questions, and I want to see if there are any questions. And I think while we're waiting for questions, I'm going to go back to that employability skills framework. Sorry, everybody.
So there
Here, let's
aren't
look at
any
this.
questions, but there is a clarification, and this one is from McLennan. It says, "Are you saying change pictures and comments, or keep the pictures and change or add comments?"
Oh, very good question. Is this from Kay?
I
Maybe?
believe so. I don't know. It's
Kay.
Neugenbauer.
Yep.
Okay.
Hi, Kay. Yep. Hi, Kay. So good to have you here. Excellent question. So if I was looking at this lesson, I would change the pictures and I would choose work-related pictures, right? Because we want to look at the extent to which materials teach employability skills, right? So I want to change the context altogether away from school and home to work. So I would switch the pictures and maybe show a sick wife or husband as the first picture and say, who's sick? Who's sick? What's going on here? And then the excellent points that someone made about taking the temperature and all that, you could still use that. Then the next question would be an office, or maybe a construction site, or some other job, or if they're a doctor, a hospital. And then using the phone. And then you could create the new questions and the new dialogue. Make sense? Did that help? Good question. And I apologize. I'm going to move through this because I'm sharing my screen. Did that help a little bit?
There's another question saying, what about calling your employer to request a day off because your child is ill?
Very good. Or a spouse. Very good. That's exactly right. Good
employees, call family member to report status, deal with a broke receiver.
Oh, broke receiver?
Abrupt.
Abrupt. Oh, yes. Very good. Yep. Very good. And then how about this one? And we didn't touch on this one. What happens if you're being harassed by a supervisor or by a coworker? You need to know who to call, don't you? So helping them understand HR. What is human resources? Who do you contact? Is there a line, a confidential line that you call? Helping them understand all those things that are in a break room. The ombudsman. Who do you call? Those types of things. And you could use that type of realia and bring it into the lesson to make it more work related and have them kind of know who to call.
David says COVID-19 family member test positive in the process for that.
Oh my gosh.
Right. Mike Sign says employee rights. And someone did mention HR. I'm looking for it in the chat, but
you guys
we were talking
are wonderful.
at the time.
You guys are wonderful. You guys are awesome. Yes, excellent. So you guys get the idea. So you have your lesson, and so you still have your lesson. You just have to tweak it a little bit. And let's kind of bring this up real quick. Not every lesson has to be contextualized. Both Angie Mudd and Mike Sines that are on this training today are Standards 2.0 trainers. And I always shared with them when we did a training of trainers that not every lesson has to be contextualized around a specific career. One day you may want to just do the ESL lesson as it is. The next day, you may need to contextualize it depending on who you're working with, okay? And it always starts with your students' goals. Who's in your classroom? Do you have a lot of IET students that want to get into the medical field? So that's where it starts. So this is excellent. All right, so if there are no questions, Liz, let me know. We're going to move on. So the next one we're going to look at, and again, this is going to be a partial lesson, and I think we actually may end a little early. And if we do, we're going to be able to go out to the Standards 2.0 book, and I can show you if you guys would like that, but we'll see. All right, so this is a math lesson, and this is a fractions multiplication lesson. And I need to go forward here. So hold on a minute. I'm a little a little far behind here in my handouts. Okay, so this is a handout. This is, I'm sorry, this is another lesson from the Minnesota Literacy Minnesota Literacy Council. And again, we're going to put in the chat pod right now the direct link to lesson 6. This is lesson 6, and it's called multiplying fractions, which we all know our students, a lot of our students need, right? I would humbly argue that many of our students need to know fractions.
Annemarie, I'm going to pause just because you need a clarification. Someone's asking
Yes.
what is an AET student?
Oh, I'm sorry, and I said that wrong, an IET. Sometimes my brain goes faster than my ability to get the words out, guys.
And you might want to clarify that too.
Yes, thank you. Integrated Education and Training. In Texas, AEL programs and consortia are required to meet the needs and to address IET, which is Integrated Education and Training classes. So if you have an IET class that is focused on security guard or medical assisting or phlebotomy, or you know that you've got students that are ESL students that are getting ready to jump into an IET class, how can you prepare them to be ready to go into an IET track? So IET, and I'll have Liz put this in the chat pod. IET means Integrated Education and Training. Thank you for slowing me down there. Liz, anything to add there, do you think?
No, ma'am.
And IET has different tracks. So there's ESL for professionals. There's different ways to address those needs, but all adult education and literacy consortia and programs are required to have IET classes. Okay, so thank you for slowing me down there for a minute. Okay, so back to our math lesson. We're going to look at a math lesson. And this is going to be part of lesson 6, fractions, and we're going to look at multiplication. And this is for high school equivalency, and it's a piece of a bigger lesson. And what's wonderful about this lesson is it's very robust. So you've got several types of lessons, and then you've got ways to scaffold it. Okay, so I'm going to do one thing real quick. Everybody hold on because we've got a little time. I'm going to pause share a minute. Hold on just a minute here. And I'm going to do one thing. All right. Okay, well, I'm going to resume share. Liz, can you still see the screen? I was trying to do something and
I see the PowerPoint.
you see the PowerPoint? Okay,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
let's get through this, and then I'm going to show you all something else. So it's a fractions lesson, focus on multiplication. It's part of a bigger piece of a lesson. Liz has given you the link to this one, and then we're going to keep going. So here we're going to go back to the rubric again, which is handout 3 in your packet, and we're going to look at the first category. And the first category is the degree of alignment to Standards 2.0. And I'm going to share with you that this sometimes gives teachers a little bit of trouble. And I'm going to clear something up, okay? And basically, we're not saying that it has to address all of the standards, okay? In order to get a superior rating or to get a 4, the material has to focus directly, it directly addresses all aspects of Standards 2.0. I would say that that's not necessarily what they're saying. They're saying that, you know, you have to, you know, key in on a sub-area standard, or, you know, you could be addressing multiple sub-area standards. So think about this when you look at this lesson, because there are standards 2.0 sub-area standards that address fractions, okay? So it doesn't address all aspects of the standards, but it gets into the weeds for a sub-area standard. So I hope that helps a little bit, okay? Did that make sense, Liz? I hope I didn't muddy the waters with that explanation.
Well, I think we'll find out if we have any questions or comments, but everything's good.
Okay. All right. I know it's getting late, guys. I don't know about you, but I need a cup of coffee when this is over. Okay, guys, hold on. Here we go. So we're looking at the degree of alignment to standards 2.0, but just that category. All right, so the objectives of this lesson are students will be able to solve problems with multiplication and fractions. All right, easy enough. And then students will be able to solve an application problem without being told what steps to take. That looks very good. And again, this is in your handout packet that I provided for you. And then we're looking at example B, but there's, I think, an example A, an example B, an example C, and each one gets a little bit harder, but we're going to stick with this one. So example B says you give a child half a candy bar and tell her to split it with her brother. Good luck with that, right? Huh. All right, so how much of the whole candy bar did her brother get? Now, I will share with you that if you have students with learning disabilities, reading it out loud at the same time they're trying to read it themselves is very difficult, okay? Especially if they have a math disability. So you can read it, but allow them to read it themselves quietly. Because sometimes hearing the interference of the voice it gets confusing for them. So, but example B is just this problem with the candy bar. And then solving example B. And here are some examples of letting students answer these questions. Did they draw a picture? Say it in words. Subtract half from a whole and then half of that, which would be 1/4. And then what is the equation? What is the equation we would write? So here are some of the ways that you could have students answer questions. And I'm going to bring up one more example. So I'm going to stop share for a minute. And I'm going to hold on for a minute because I do want to do one thing for you all. And sometimes silence is very good. Okay, so I'm going to do this.
And in the meantime, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and post those in the chat pod and we can answer them when Annemarie has a moment.
Yep. And I wanted to bring this up because I thought you would appreciate this. So, okay, so I added this slide. I wasn't going to share this slide, but I think it would be good for you guys to see it. So if you've got a more advanced class or you want to do groupings in your class, you can have more critical thinking discussion, which I think is wonderful. So you can ask these questions, not with all students, but this is part of the lesson. So again, thinking about whether it's addressing standards 2.0, I thought this would help you make your decision. So here are some questions. Draw a picture to show why. Why did the number get smaller even though we multiplied? That's a hard one. Draw the candy bar, then cut out half, then show them half of that is, what half of that is. When we multiply a proper fraction, what is less than 1? All those types of things. And I think it would be a great idea to bring in candy bars. What do you guys think? Give everybody a candy bar? That would be really cool. Or a small candy bar or something, or plastic candy bars. You can buy manipulatives that look like candy bars and then you can cut them up. So there's a lot of great things you could do here.
And David says you could do baking and doubling the recipe of having it.
Oh, yes.
Pizza versus chicken, and then how many pieces everyone gets. I'm hungry.
Oh my gosh, I know, so am I. David, great idea. All right, so excellent. So let's look at our time to figure out what you all thought of that lesson. And, you know, you could have several days of this lesson. That's how robust it is when you see it from the Minnesota Literacy Council. So what did you score this? Based on how it is now, how would you score it, please? Go ahead, take 30 or 40 seconds and share your answers in the chat pod, and then we'll discuss it.
So as you imagine the Jeopardy theme song playing in the background, I'm just waiting to see for some
I know.
responses. Janine scores this as a 2. That's our first response. I'm still waiting for everyone else to kind of tabulate and think. Danisha has a 3. Linda scores it a 2.
Very good.
Barbara, a 3.
This is
David
all
asks, can you zoom and make it bigger, please?
Oh, you know what? I am so sorry. Here you go. David, thank you. Thank you for being on the ball. I'm sorry. Here it is. There you go.
Scores it a 2.
You guys are right. Kind of where
we have 2s and 3s. That's where we're at. 2s and 3s.
David, did that help? Did that help when I zoomed in on it?
Another 2. David says yes.
Okay, great. All right, so for the sake of time, because I do want to, we're going to talk about how we can give this lesson more 2.0 muscles in a minute. So I want to show you where I was. And a lot of the trainers were. I would score this between a 3 and a 2, probably a 2.5. So I think we all agree with where we scored it. Okay?
Yes, we have lots of 2s and 3s.
Very good. So excellent job. And again, this is just to kind of give you a little cursory practice with this rubric, knowing that you can start using this rubric now with your lessons. And I forgot to mention earlier, because I've had this question come up, this rubric, is not used to judge a teacher when they're presenting a lesson, okay? This is a document you can use yourself to evaluate your own lessons, or to work as a team with your colleagues and think about how you could 2.0 a lesson. All right, so it's a document for you, not to cause stress in any way. So I want to kind of put that out there. And I love rubrics. So hopefully you can find a way to use this yourself or with your staff or your teammates. Okay, so how can we Standards 2.0 this math lesson? All right, so here's our standard. Content area 2, Roman numeral 2 is math. The sub area is 2, which is computations. And we're focusing in on sub area standard F, which is build foundations and develop understanding of addition, subtraction, multiplication, division of fractions and decimals. The detailed work activity for this sub-area standard, one of them anyway, is estimate construction project costs. Ooh, the fun that you could have contextualizing this lesson. Industry example is construction and extraction. An example of what you would do would be to calculate conduit fill, determine the square inches of conductors being installed to determine appropriate size of conduit. Wow, okay. So how would you add more 2.0 content? So now we're not talking about the workplace anymore, but if you want to put a spin on it and think about how you could make it more meaty for 2.0 and at the same time giving it contextualize it around a career, go for it, because I think everybody would benefit from it. So let's take about 30 or 40 seconds and think about how you would add more 2.0 content. And you guys are doing awesome. I know we're all getting a little tired. If you need to stand up and stretch a minute while you type, I don't know if you can do that, but if you can kind of stretch around a little bit. All right. What
no
answers?
Responses yet. Oh, can we have one from David? Our presenters are super awesome. Oh, he likes you. And then Linda says, bring real life materials for job sites.
Very good. Yep. And maybe give more math examples around a specific industry. Or, and I think, wasn't it David that gave the example of bringing in the chicken and having them cut it up, right? That's an example of how you could make this, give this more muscles for 2.0. Okay. And how would you
visit different work sites? Sorry.
Oh, very good. So here are some more examples. Consider Alan's job and his prospect for a raise. You guys didn't see those questions, but those questions are in the lesson plan. And there were questions about scenarios about a job and prospects for a raise. So bring in more of those types of questions. Provide scenarios involving retirement, financial planning. That would be a great idea. Change from a family personal context to a general work context. Okay. And how could we find workplace examples? Well, here's our construction site again, and I've got another surprise for you. And you may be familiar with this resource. If not, you are going to leave this 3-hour session today, and if you attended yesterday's, you now have 3 different resources to find things for lessons. But here's our second one for today. And this is the City University of New York. Oh, wait a minute. I'm not done with this. Hold on. I jumped. All right. So we're not done with that. Sorry, I forgot about this slide. So how can we find workplace examples? Okay, let's stay here for a minute. In order to integrate the workplace examples into this math worksheet or this math lesson plan, you can examine the DWAs for the sub-area standard you are addressing, right? So we know that this is construction and extraction, so you could find examples for workplace examples, and then ask students when they will utilize multiply fractions at work. Well, there's a typo there. Ask students when they will utilize multiplying fractions at work. So where and what industries are they going to have to multiply fractions? Well, a lot of them. You know, nurses need to multiply fractions. People on a construction job need to multiply fractions. There's a whole bunch of different things. Integrate contextualized math problems for a specific career. HVAC, nursing aide, medical assistant. Okay, so those are examples, and bringing in those workplace examples are going to give it a 4 because you are addressing the standard, but you're also contextualizing it around a specific occupation. Okay, this is what I jumped the gun on. So when you're thinking about where to find workplace examples or workplace lesson plans, this is a phenomenal resource. This is the City University of New York, and there are the career kits for HSE and ESL learners. How many of you are familiar with this amazing online toolkit that is free? How many of you are familiar with this? Interested to see.
No responses yet. 1.
Okay. All
not
right.
familiar.
Oh, yay! This is wonderful. Okay, so I encourage you to examine. Now, let me back up. These are all contextualized. And here are your fields: healthcare, technology, community, social services, education, childcare, etc. But why do you think that I highlighted some of them in blue? I know you guys have been with me for 3 hours and you guys are rock stars, but why did I highlight those? Why are those important to us? Why are those important to us?
Nothing yet. Top 4,
Okay.
David says.
Top 4. Well, what are the 4 industry clusters in Texas? Healthcare, advanced manufacturing, transportation and distribution, logistics, transportation, warehousing, construction. So those are really, really focused in for Texas. That's why I highlighted them in blue. You could use all of those, but those I would go to first because they apply to Texas. So what I'm going to do now is have Liz put the link to the CUNY Career Kit in the chat pod. And this is where you're going to find all of your contextualized lesson plans that you can download and use. Okay. Now, there's a multi-sector career kit, which is what you see on the screen right now, but there's also something called Career Fundamentals, which introduces students to key questions related to career decision making, which you can use to help students set goals and/or for career navigation or counseling advisement. So she's also going to put the link to the CUNY Career Fundamentals. Okay. This is an amazing website and resources, and it's very up to date. Okay, we have 5 minutes left, and I'm going to stop, and we're going to come back to this. And we saw this in webinar 1. All right, let's look at the big picture again. We first saw this graphic during the first webinar. Standards 2.0 primes and facilitates contextualized lesson planning and implementation of instructional activities which will address workplace and academic skills. And remember, during the first webinar, we talked about the fact you can plan your lessons to include contextualization when they are appropriate. For example, if you know numerous students in your class are preparing to enter trades as an HVAC technician or are going to start an IET class, right? Integrated education and training at the college as an HVAC technician or a plumber or a pipe welder, you can contextualize math lessons to address the types of math problems they will encounter and need to complete. Okay. So contextualized instruction is in the middle with everything we've talked about around the outside. The Standards 2.0, using our detailed work activities and industry clusters to infuse content with career focus, and also our employability skills framework. So, are there any questions as we as we count down?
There are no questions yet. They might be typing though.
Okay, so I'm going to come here and I want to look at the objectives. There were 2, and I want to see the job that I did. I hope that we met these. Identify the categories for the new Standards 2.0 rubric for evaluating lessons. Did we do that? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Let me know. I'm always looking for feedback, always.
So they're raising their hands, nice, the virtual hands, and then we have lots of people saying yes, yes, and in the chat pod they're putting thumbs up.
Excellent. Awesome. Evaluate existing lesson plans by using Standards 2.0. Those were the ESL and the math, the Employability Skills Framework, and the Rubric. Okay, very good. Yay. All right, so here's time for a reflection. And these are just questions. I would love to hear. Think about what you have learned in the last 2 webinars. Please share one measurable step you will take to integrate Standards 2.0 into your instructional practice or career navigation with students. So one measurable step. I know we've covered a lot in 3 hours, and you'll want to go back and look at your PowerPoint and look at the handout packet, but just one measurable step. And remember, it doesn't have to be a big step. One measurable step. What are you going to use? Are you going to dig into the Standards 2.0 book? Are you going to commit to reading the introduction, using the Employability Skills Framework?
So we have one response so far. David indicated relate the topic to each student by their interest. Angie
good.
Mudd says use the rubric to evaluate current lessons. And Mary Turner says the same thing, the rubric. Janine Calm says the Minnesota link will help with lessons for beginning ESL students.
Excellent, excellent. Very good, very good. All right, so as they're coming in, I am going to put this slide up. I'm going to turn my video back on for a reason, because I want to be able to have you see me. And at this time, if you can, without falling down or tripping on something, I would like you all to get up if you can. If you can't, don't worry about it. I want you to get up, and I want you to take a stand, and I want you to do a small bow, okay? I want you to do a small bow, and I want you to give yourself a big round of applause, which I'm doing right now. You did an absolutely awesome job hanging in with me for all the time, for 3 hours. I'm humbled, I'm honored, and I feel blessed to have been able to spend the last 3 hours with all of you. And I just want to say, keep AEL strong, keep doing the incredible things you're doing. It's been an amazing almost 5 months with COVID-19, and we continue to stand strong for our students and for our colleagues. And so I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart, and reach out with questions, everybody. And I think we're going to end in time. So any last minute questions? I'm here. Let's see what time it is.
Yeah, we do. We have some
minute.
questions. A very important question. And this is from
Yes.
David. When are you teaching again?
Well, let me know what program you are from, David, and hopefully I can come see you. So reach out, email. I'm not sure what program you're from.
So it says, great training. Thank you. Blessings and be safe. Both of you are amazing. Thank you. Challenging lesson and presentation. So David's from McLennan.
Oh, David. Okay. I love McLennan. I love Waco. I'd love to come and visit. I absolutely love Waco. It's beautiful there. So, okay, everybody. I know that Olga's got to get ready to start her session. So I want to thank my amazing moderator, Liz Moya. And I also want to thank Josh DuPont for hosting. And take care, everybody. And I'm always here via email, okay? And I know we have to go. So take care, everybody. AEL strong and stay safe. Bye-bye.